You think your suffering is a mistake, that something has gone wrong, that life was meant to feel better than this. Every ache, every disappointment, every unanswered longing, you've been taught to see it all as an obstacle, something to overcome, to fix, to escape. But I am here to tell you the opposite. Suffering is not the problem, it is the point. It is not the flaw in your life's structure, it is the structure. Your pain is not a sign that you are off course. It is the most honest indicator that you are alive. You suffer because you will, because you want, because the will to live moves through you endlessly, blindly, ceaselessly. And where there is willing, there is tension. Where there is striving, there is friction. Where there is life, there is pain. They lied to you when they told you suffering was unnatural, that it was some cosmic error, that if only you worked hard enough, healed deeply enough, or prayed sincerely enough, the pain would vanish. But it never does. You outrun one form only to find another waiting. You climb out of one pit only to discover a new hunger. This is not failure, this is the design. The will does not want peace, it wants continuation, and continuation demands discomfort. You may believe that if you achieve enough, love enough, grow enough, you will one day wake into a life free of this restlessness. But I must tell you, there is no such life. Not because you are broken, but because the world is. Or rather, because the world is exactly what it is. A stage for endless willing and therefore endless suffering. Even your highest joys carry the seed of sorrow. The more intensely you love, the more vulnerable you become to loss. The more you desire, the more you fear. The more you succeed, the more you must maintain. Every light casts a shadow, and when you suffer, you are not malfunctioning. You are merely feeling the truth, the fundamental vibration of existence. And yet most recoil from this. They drown themselves in noise, in hope, in shallow distraction. They seek pleasure not to enjoy it, but to forget what's underneath. They say, life is about happiness, and tremble the moment happiness leaves. But you, if you are ready, you can choose a different path. You can choose to stop asking for life to be painless. You can choose to look directly at the architecture of your sorrow and say, I see you, I will not run. Suffering is not the thing to be cured, it is the thing that reveals. It shows you who you are without your dreams, it strips you bare, and in that bareness, something else appears, not joy, not triumph, but clarity. And from clarity comes a different kind of strength, one that does not need life to be good in order to keep going, one that does not collapse when pleasure vanishes. If you are suffering now, do not ask how to remove it. Ask what it reveals. Do not rush to fix it. Learn to face it. And understand this, your suffering is not your enemy. It is your most honest teacher. And it may be the only thing that ever speaks to you without lying. You suffer because you will. This is the first truth most cannot bear. They believe suffering is accidental, an interruption in an otherwise peaceful design. But it is not. Suffering is the natural consequence of the will to live, the essence of your being and of the world itself. It does not come from circumstance, but from structure. It is not an exception. It is the rule. The will is blind. It has no knowledge, no foresight, no logic. It does not ask whether what it wants is good or fair or sustainable. It simply wants. And because you are its expression, you want too. You long, you crave, you hunger, not out of choice, but because the will speaks through your blood, your instincts, your dreams. Even your intellect, that proud tool of reason, is nothing more than the will's servant, crafting more elaborate means to pursue what the will demands. This is why your desires never end, why satisfaction dissolves the moment it is achieved, why every goal attained gives birth to another. The will does not aim at peace, it aims at continuation. It uses your longing to keep you in motion, and it does not care if you suffer along the way. In fact, it thrives on your suffering. Because pain is what keeps you moving. When you are content, you stop. And the will cannot allow that. Even pleasure, which you mistake for happiness, is not what it seems. It is not a positive state. It is the brief silence between two forms of pain. The relief of hunger, the warmth after cold, the orgasm after tension, all of these are not joy in themselves, but temporary cessations of need. And the moment they pass, the need returns. You are never truly full, only briefly distracted from your emptiness. The will does not seek your well-being. It does not care for your identity, your legacy, or your sense of meaning. It only wants you to go on. It is the force that drives the animal to flee, the lover to chase, the artist to obsess, the addict to relapse. It wears 1,000 masks, but beneath each one is the same impulse: forward. More. Again. You may believe that your suffering comes from a failed relationship or a lost opportunity or a wounded past. But these are only forms. The root is deeper. You suffer because you exist. Because to be alive is to be a vessel of the will, and that will does not stop until death. It does not reward you for effort. It does not calm when you've had enough. It keeps pressing. It keeps whispering. It keeps needing. This is the horror most cannot face. That pain is not a deviation from the path, but the path itself. And yet to see this is not to collapse. It is to wake. To understand that what you feel is not failure, but reality. You were not born into a world designed for joy. You were born into a structure built for motion. And where there is motion without end, there can be no peace. If you have ever felt that even in your highest moments, something was still missing, this is why. If you have ever wondered why your longing cannot be silenced, this is why. The will does not rest, and neither do you. Not because you are broken, but because you are alive. Everywhere you turn, they promise you an end to suffering. They offer it in soft voices, glowing images, rehearsed wisdom. The solution, they say, is success, or love, or faith, or health, or positive thinking. Always the suggestion is the same. If you suffer, it is because something has gone wrong, and that something can be corrected. But this is the lie that sustains the cycle. The lie that suffering is optional, that it is a glitch in the code, that you can escape it if only you live correctly. But suffering is not a punishment. It is not the price you pay for your mistakes. It is not something that befalls only the unlucky or the unwise. Suffering is the substance of life. It is the fuel of movement, the echo of the will as it passes through the world. You may disguise it, delay it, deny it, but you cannot erase it. Not with wealth, not with love, not with any of the substitutes they offer in the marketplace of illusion. Society must maintain the fantasy of a suffering-free life, because without it the game stops. People would not work as hard, consume as much, chase as blindly. The economy of distraction would collapse. So the culture is structured to convince you that if you feel pain, you have failed. That happiness is the natural state and suffering is the problem to be fixed. This belief keeps you running. It keeps the will clothed in hope. But have you not noticed? The ones who reach the supposed goal do not rest. The rich are restless. The loved are afraid. The healthy are still discontent. Every form of attainment carries within it the seed of its own dissatisfaction. Why? Because the promise was false. The will cannot be silenced by what it already possesses. It only respects what lies ahead. The lie is also moral. They tell you that if you are good, you will be spared. That suffering comes only to those who err. But morality, too, is a garment placed over the structure of suffering. The world does not operate on justice. The world operates on motion. The innocent suffer. The guilty prosper. Pain is not distributed fairly. It is distributed universally. It is not based on deserts, but on design. And even the religions which claim to speak from eternity participate in this deception. They offer salvation later, joy later, peace later. But you must suffer now and believe. You must walk through pain with the promise that on the other side you will be made whole. But ask yourself, why must the truth always wait? Why must every system require your discomfort in the present for a reward that never arrives? The answer is clear, because to admit that suffering is the point, not the prelude, would destroy the entire illusion. There is no system that profits from your clarity, only from your confusion. But you are here because something in you is already beginning to see. You feel the emptiness behind the smiles. You sense the falseness of every promise. You have suffered enough to begin asking different questions. Not, how can I escape this pain, but what if this pain is not the problem but the doorway? That question is dangerous, but it is the only one worth asking. Suffering wears many masks, but they are all faces of the same thing. You may think there are different kinds of pain, one more tolerable, another more tragic, but each is merely a variation of the same force. The will to live moves through you in different disguises, but its effect is constant. Discomfort, unrest, dissatisfaction. You may not always call it suffering, but that is what it is. Even your dull days, even your longing for more, even your moments of numbness, all of it is suffering, concealed beneath the surface of experience. There is the suffering of desire. This is the most obvious, the sharp ache of not having what you want. It could be love, success, recognition, security. The object doesn't matter. What matters is the craving, the burning tension of not yet. This pain feels purposeful. You tell yourself it will end once the object is attained. But the moment it arrives, the feeling doesn't vanish, it mutates. Because then comes the suffering of fulfillment, the pain that emerges when the goal has been reached and its promised peace does not arrive. You were told that satisfaction was waiting on the other side of effort, but instead you find boredom. Boredom is not rest. It is the return of the will, now deprived of something new to chase. It whispers again, "This is not enough." So the cycle resumes, and then there is the suffering of loss. All that you desired and all that you attained will one day leave you. Every bond breaks, every possession fades, every triumph is forgotten. This suffering is quieter but deeper. You feel it not as fire but as emptiness. The hollowness after love ends, the silence after applause, the space where something once was now echoing with absence. Even memory which pretends to preserve cannot stop the erosion. And finally, there is the suffering of awareness. The rarest and most severe. This is the suffering that arises not from what you do not have, but from what you understand. The pain of seeing clearly, of knowing that no desire will ever be enough, that no pleasure lasts, that even when you are momentarily content, it is not peace, it is forgetfulness. To see the will in action is to suffer differently, not emotionally, but metaphysically. You grieve not for a single loss, but for the structure of life itself. This kind of suffering is not visible. It cannot be soothed with encouragement. It is not healed by action. Because it is not about fixing your condition. It is about recognizing that your condition is, by its very nature, unfixable. Each form of pain is a signpost pointing not to a problem in your personality, but to a truth in the structure of being. You are not sick because you suffer. You suffer because you are awake. The only alternative is blindness. And though blindness may seem easier, it is a peace bought at the cost of your own honesty. To name these forms of suffering is not to indulge them. It is to face them, to call the will by its name. And once you begin to do that, you are no longer merely a vessel. You become a witness. The world will tell you that suffering is meaningless, that it is random, cruel, without purpose. But I tell you the opposite. Suffering is not meaningless. It is the only experience that cannot lie. Pleasure deceives. Hope deceives. Even love dressed in the illusions of permanence deceives. But suffering? It strips the mind bare. It does not flatter. It does not persuade. It simply shows. It is suffering, not happiness, that awakens. Not because pain is sacred, but because it is inescapable. It forces you into confrontation. It tears away your distractions, your ambitions, your fantasies. When the dream collapses and you are left alone with the ache that nothing can cure, the illusions that once sustained you begin to rot. What remains is what has always been true but was hidden behind your wishes. Suffering is the crack in the mirror, the fissure that appears when you try to reflect yourself back as whole, as complete, as content. The crack does not break you, it reveals you. It shows you that you are not the story you told yourself, that the life you built upon desire was built upon sand, and only when that structure begins to fall can you begin to see clearly. You do not awaken through comfort. You do not grow through satisfaction. These things make you sleepy. They lull you back into willing, into motion, into craving. Only pain breaks the pattern. Only pain makes you question. Only pain has the power to slow the will and force the mind into awareness. Think of your most profound realizations. Did they come during moments of bliss, or in the silence that followed collapse? You see, suffering is not the teacher you wanted, but it is the one that speaks in a language your illusions cannot silence. It speaks not in words, but in emptiness. It does not offer explanations. It offers a mirror. This is why those who suffer consciously are closer to liberation than those who live comfortably in illusion. The man who suffers but does not understand becomes bitter. But the man who suffers and begins to see becomes still. He does not flee. He does not numb. He endures, and in that endurance he begins to glimpse a reality beyond the cycle. Pain is not a sign that you are failing. It is a sign that you are beginning to see. It is the pressure that reveals what you truly believe. It exposes what you still cling to, what you still worship in the name of happiness. And it asks again and again, will you keep pretending, or will you finally look? To awaken is not to escape suffering. It is to no longer be surprised by it. To understand that pain is not the interruption of life, it is the revealing of it. And once you understand this, your suffering becomes a tool, not to be avoided but to be followed, not to be silenced but to be listened to. What does your pain say? What has it shown you that comfort never could? This is the beginning of awakening. And if you do not run, if you do not retreat back into distraction, then suffering may become your first true ally. Not because it is good, but because it is honest. At first, all suffering feels wrong. You resist it, curse it, try to outrun it. This is natural. The will teaches you to avoid pain and pursue relief. But once you begin to see that suffering is not a mistake, but the revelation of truth, something begins to change. You stop asking how to end it and start asking what it means. You stop recoiling from it and begin to stand still within it. This is the shift, from resistance to recognition, from complaint to comprehension. You begin to understand that suffering is not a punishment, nor is it a test. It is simply what happens when the will is seen without disguise. When you stop pretending that life owes you joy, when you stop demanding that your efforts yield peace, when you stop asking to be spared the weight of reality, you begin to feel something different. Not relief, not pleasure, but clarity. This clarity is cold. It is not romantic. It does not sing, but it steadies you. You wake with the same pain in your chest, but you no longer ask, why is this happening to me? Instead, you say, of course it hurts. How could it not? You still feel the ache of desire, the sting of loss, the pull of boredom, but you no longer believe they are signs of failure. They are signs of being alive within the architecture of the will. The man who expects suffering is not pessimistic, he is prepared. He walks through the world without needing it to be different. He feels pain, yes, but he no longer adds to it with expectation. He knows that disappointment is not a tragedy. It is the confirmation of what he already sees. And because of this, he moves through life more freely, not weighed down by false hope. To live without demanding happiness is not to live in despair. It is to live without illusion. And from this posture comes something that resembles strength. Not the strength of domination, but the strength of detachment. You are no longer shaken by every failure. You are no longer surprised by betrayal. You are no longer undone by loss, because you knew it was coming. You always knew. Understanding suffering does not mean liking it. It means no longer being at war with it. You sit with it, breathe with it, let it pass through you without twisting it into identity. You stop asking pain to justify itself. You let it be what it is, the echo of existence, the sound of the will in motion. Others will still try to numb it, They will chase their distractions, their dreams, their cures. Let them. They have not seen what you have. They still believe that peace lies in acquisition. You know better. You have looked behind the curtain, and now you walk differently. Not because you are above suffering, but because you no longer bow to it. This is the beginning of liberation, not freedom from pain, but freedom from illusion. And in that freedom, even suffering begins to change. It becomes quieter, sharper, cleaner. It no longer haunts you, it speaks to you, and because you listen, it does not need to scream. And so you have suffered. You have bled in ways no one saw. You have watched your hopes dissolve. You have cried not because someone hurt you, but because you realized no one could save you, not love, not achievement, not belief. And if you have listened this far, it is because somewhere within you already knew that suffering wasn't your enemy. It was your mirror. The world wants you to fix your pain, heal it, erase it. But what if you don't need to heal your suffering? What if you need to understand it? To see that it has always been the most honest part of your life? That every laugh, every moment of desire, every burst of hope eventually led you back here, to this silence, this ache, this rawness that no pleasure can cover for long. What begins as agony becomes instruction. Pain teaches what ease never could. It reveals that life is not a path to joy, but a movement through illusions. Each time the illusion dies, it hurts. But the death of illusion is the birth of clarity, and clarity is worth every wound. There is a different kind of dignity in walking through life without needing it to make you happy. A man who no longer asks to be spared does not crumble when he suffers. He observes, he understands, and in this understanding he becomes untouchable, not because nothing harms him, but because nothing deceives him. You do not need to be joyful to live with grace. You do not need to be whole to walk with strength. You need only to see what suffering is and what it is not. It is not your failure. It is not your enemy. It is the pattern of life speaking to you directly, without euphemism or disguise. And once you learn to listen, you will no longer need to be comforted. You will no longer fear pain because you will no longer expect anything else. You will sit in the storm and feel the wind and say, "Yes, of course, this is what it means to live." And in that moment, not pleasure, not success, but clarity will become your companion. If these words have met you where you already stand, if they have simply put language to what you have long felt but could not say, then remain. Subscribe, not because I offer hope, but because I will not offer lies. And in the comments, tell me the moment you stopped believing that pain was your problem and started to see that it was your path. Your answer may become the mirror someone else needs to stop resisting and begin observing. And in that small turning, they too may discover what you now know. That suffering isn't the problem, and it is the point.